Bruce Willis officially moved into a care home on August 15, 2025, with his family spending nearly $200,000 each year to ensure his safety and comfort. The once fearless action star, who shouted through explosions in Die Hard, can no longer speak, a devastating turn in his life. But according to his wife Emma, the loss of his voice isn't even the most heartbreaking part. For years, she thought Bruce was simply becoming distant, not realizing that his mind was slowly deteriorating. The truth was that the disease had been quietly stealing him away long before anyone had a name for it. What his family later uncovered would shatter hearts around the world. Bruce Willis was born on March 19, 1955, in Oberstein, a small town in West Germany. His father was an American soldier stationed there in the aftermath of World War II, and his mother was a German woman from Kassel. From the very beginning, Bruce's life was a blend of two worlds. He grew up on a military base surrounded by lingering shadows of the war, caught between the strictness of American discipline and the traditions of German culture. But this fragile balance shifted when Bruce was only 2 years old. In 1957, his father left the army, and the family packed up and crossed the ocean to New Jersey. Suddenly, Bruce was no longer the boy from Germany. He became just another kid in a tough American neighborhood filled with factory workers and struggling families. His father worked with metal, his mother took small jobs at local banks, and though they tried to make ends meet, the family had very little. Bruce himself often felt like an outsider, as if he didn't belong anywhere. As the 1960s began, a painful struggle emerged in Bruce's life. Around the age of 6, he developed a severe stutter. Words stuck in his throat, and no matter how hard he tried, sentences stumbled and broke apart. Other kids mocked him relentlessly, cruelly giving him the nickname Buck Buck. To defend himself, Bruce lashed out with his fists, swinging wildly in fights he never wanted. But inside, he carried the shame of not being able to speak properly. Sometimes, it took him several minutes just to get a single thought out, and the frustration slowly crushed his confidence. By the time he was 10, school felt less like a place of learning and more like a battlefield. The stutter isolated him, cutting him off from the world around him. High school threatened to break him completely. He often skipped classes to avoid being called on and acted out with pranks to deflect attention from his speech. But everything shifted one day in the early 1970s, when Bruce, then about 15 years old, made the bold decision to join the drama club. What happened next was nothing short of miraculous. The moment he stepped on stage and delivered lines, his stutter disappeared. Suddenly, he could speak clearly, fluently, and without fear. For the first time in his life, people listened. Teachers were stunned, and Bruce realized that when he was pretending to be someone else, the words came effortlessly. Acting gave him back his voice, and with it, his confidence. That discovery completely changed his life. By 1973, Bruce had even been elected student council president. Though some classmates continued to mock him, their words no longer mattered. He had found something that made him feel alive. In 1975, while studying theater at Montclair State University, 2 professors gave him speech therapy that helped his fluency even more. But by 1977, Bruce was restless. He dropped out of college and headed straight to New York City, determined to pursue acting. Arriving with no connections and barely any money, Bruce survived by working long hours as a bartender. At times, he slept on friends' couches or squeezed into tiny apartments just to get by. Despite the hardships, he kept people entertained. He skated to work, played harmonica for tips, and turned his bar shifts into mini performances. Still, the struggle was real. In his first year alone, he faced more than 100 rejections. But slowly, opportunities began to open. He landed small roles in off-Broadway plays, and in 1977, he got his first real part in a production called Heaven and Earth. The pay was low, and rejection remained constant, but Bruce refused to quit. Some nights, when money was especially tight, he even slept on benches. Yet, his persistence paid off. He began appearing in commercials, landing minor movie roles, and by 1980, he even managed a brief scene alongside Frank Sinatra. One night, while working behind the bar, Bruce got into a fight defending someone and broke his nose badly. He needed emergency surgery, and doctors feared the injury could permanently damage his voice. Thankfully, he recovered, though the scar remained, a mark that later gave him a rugged edge. At the time, no one could have guessed that the scrappy bartender with a stutter would one day become one of the biggest action stars on the planet. But during those gritty New York years, Bruce wasn't just surviving, he was building deep friendships. One of the most important was with John Goodman, whom he met while bartending at Chelsea Central. Together, they performed wild, improvised plays that stunned small audiences. These raw, unscripted performances, full of shouting, tears, and intensity, sharpened Bruce's timing and gave him an energy that would one day electrify movie screens. In 1985, his persistence finally paid off. He auditioned for a new TV show called Moonlighting, competing against nearly 3,000 actors, including seasoned radio stars and formally trained performers. ABC rejected Bruce 11 times, but he refused to give up. When he came back for his final audition with a shaved head, earrings, and a cocky attitude, he ad-libbed his lines and made the producers laugh out loud. That moment changed his life. He got the role. When Moonlighting premiered on March 3, 1985, Bruce Willis became an overnight sensation. The show was expensive and chaotic, often taking twice as long to film as other TV series, with scripts running 120 pages. But Bruce's speed, charm, and unpredictability made it a hit. His chemistry and frequent clashes with co-star Sybil Shepherd kept fans glued to their screens. By 1986, tensions on set were boiling over. Arguments broke out, and the two sometimes refused to speak off camera. The stress hit Bruce hard. In 1988, he collapsed from exhaustion and was hospitalized. Scripts were delayed, ratings faltered, but his magnetism on screen never faded. At the height of his TV fame, Bruce shocked the world in January 1987 by releasing a music album, The Return of Bruno. To everyone's surprise, it was a hit, selling over 500,000 copies and going gold. It even climbed to number 2 on the UK charts. Critics mocked it, but fans embraced his boldness. Singing alongside soul legends, Bruce turned the project into something memorable. It was quirky, fun, and completely unexpected, just like him. But the workload was wearing him down. With Moonlighting episodes costing over $1 million each and constant production delays, including one caused by Shepherd's pregnancy in 1987 and a major writer's strike in 1988, the show struggled to stay afloat. On May 14, 1989, Moonlighting aired its final episode. By then, Bruce's career had already outgrown the small screen. His salary had skyrocketed from $1,500 per gig to $50,000 per episode, and Hollywood had begun to take notice. At that time, Bruce was still seen as the charming TV star from Moonlighting, not a blockbuster action hero. But fate had other plans. In the late 1980s, a script for a film called Die Hard was circulating through Hollywood. Major stars like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone turned it down. Even Frank Sinatra was offered the role, since the movie was technically a sequel to a film he had starred in decades earlier, but he passed as well. Then, almost out of nowhere, the role landed in Bruce's lap. The bigger shock wasn't just that he got the part, it was that the studio paid him $5 million, a staggering sum usually reserved for names like Robert Redford or Dustin Hoffman. Many in the industry thought the studio was insane. Filming began in late 1987, with most of the action shot inside Fox Plaza in Los Angeles. When Die Hard hit theaters on July 15, 1988, no one expected the phenomenon it would become. The movie raked in over $140 million worldwide and transformed Bruce Willis into a full-fledged action hero. But the role came at a cost. During one particularly loud explosion scene, Bruce suffered permanent partial hearing loss in his left ear. He kept the injury quiet to avoid disrupting filming, but years later, it was revealed that the damage never healed. Despite the setback, his portrayal of John McClane was revolutionary. He wasn't a superhuman muscle-bound warrior, he was an ordinary man in extraordinary circumstances, and audiences loved him for it. Just a year later, Bruce surprised everyone again by lending his voice to a talking baby in the 1989 comedy Look Who's Talking. At first, the project sounded like a joke, but Bruce's decision proved brilliant. For only 4 days of work, he earned $10 million thanks to a smart profit-sharing deal. The movie, made for less than $10 million, grossed nearly $300 million worldwide. Families adored his witty, sarcastic voiceover, and the success launched a franchise, with Bruce earning another $10 million for the sequel. Suddenly, everyone realized Bruce Willis wasn't just talented, he was also savvy. That same year, he took a risk with something completely different. In September 1989, he starred in Country, a quiet, emotional drama about a Vietnam veteran in a small town. Bruce grew a mustache and played the role with understated pain. His father had fought in the Korean War, and perhaps that connection lent his performance authenticity. Critics, including Roger Ebert, praised the film, but audiences largely ignored it, and it only earned a few $1 million. Still, it showed Bruce's willingness to challenge himself and step outside the action hero mold. By 1990, he was back in full action mode with Die Hard 2, which hit theaters on July 4th. This time, Bruce knew his worth. He negotiated $7.5 million upfront plus a share of the profits. The film grossed over $240 million worldwide, surpassing the original. Behind the scenes, Bruce argued with the director over stunts. He didn't want cartoonish exaggerations. He wanted the danger to feel authentic. That focus on realism only strengthened his reputation. By the time Die Hard with a Vengeance came out in 1995, his salary had soared to $15 million, cementing his place among Hollywood's elite.